Now, information overload or information fatigue is the idea that you have got essentially mental exhaustion that comes from the exposure to too much information. So you might notice this happening because you've been on so many hairdressing courses or skills-based courses that you've got so much information under your belt that you're now feeling a little bit tired when it comes to making decisions subconsciously because you have so much information to choose from. You're also making that creative anxiety worse for yourself, and we're going to talk about how we can overcome this. Having this mental exhaustion or information overload, information fatigue, can also impede your decision-making process, and it can result in decisions that are poor or decisions that just aren't being made. So again, you'll probably notice this more so in your creative anxiety moments. So there's moments when you're thinking, crap, I don't know what colour to use, I don't know what style to do, did I use the right section in pattern, did I section that hair correctly, did I do this, did I do that? Those moments are where you'll probably notice your overload of information affecting you most. It can also apply to taking a next step in your career as well. So if you're feeling like you're a little bit lost, or maybe you're taking a direction that you don't really know is for you, or you're not sure where to go next, that can also come from information overload or information fatigue. The fact that we're constantly bombarded left, right, and centre, especially in this digital age, with new opportunities or new specialisms or new areas that you can focus on in your hairdressing career, it can be really hard to whittle it down to one decision. So we're going to look at how to stop letting information overload affect us. So let's look at what it might be like if we're being reactive to an information overload. So if we have been on hundreds of courses, we've invested time and money into learning new skills or developing our skills, now we're feeling like we're in those moments a lot of the time where we have that creative anxiety, we have so many different bits of information to pull from to make this decision in the moment. So when we're in that, we act in a reactive way. So if we're feeling creative anxiety, we act in a way that copes with creative anxiety. So this is what it might look like if we're being reactive. In a second, we're going to look at what it might be like if we're being proactive. So avoiding creative anxiety, avoiding information overload. So being reactive, we might be escaping things. So we might be escaping certain clients, escaping certain next steps in our career, escaping doing certain techniques on certain clients and talking them out of it because we're reacting to information overload, which causes us to feel anxiety. We might also be prioritizing. Now, prioritizing might sound like a good thing, but it might be prioritizing the wrong thing, which is often what you do in a reactive state of mind. Now, because we have so much information and we've developed our skills so much, or in certain different areas, we might be prioritizing the thing we feel most comfortable with. So again, it's that kind of idea of escaping doing something new and prioritizing what we're comfortable with already. Refusing, very similar to escaping, we might be refusing certain next steps in our career or certain techniques that we have to apply to clients to achieve the result they want. Maybe we're refusing and finding a way to get around it so that we don't have to do it. Satisfying. Now, satisfying is the opposite to being a perfectionist. So satisfying is achieving a result to the point that it is purely satisfactory. I'm happy with that. It wasn't too bad. The colour came out how I wanted it to. It will do. That kind of approach. And then we've got shifting. Now, through all these behaviours, escaping, prioritising, refusing and satisfying, what we'll do subconsciously is we'll shift into a frame of mind or a position where we have stuck in our comfort zone. We've subconsciously chosen to stay somewhere we feel comfortable. But again, look at the idea of, are we adding to that? Are we adding to the anxiety and information overload we have? And therefore, are we making it worse for ourselves and making ourselves shift into a space where we aren't actually growing, which we naturally want to do as artists? So these are kind of some of the behaviors that you'll have when you might be reacting to information overload. But what can we do if we want to be proactive? So we want to avoid the information overload, avoid the creative anxiety. Now, before I say these points, I do want you to bear in mind you have to find a fine line between information overload and pausing that for a while and not learning enough. You never want to get into that state where you become stagnant. So all of this kind of mental behavior and mental awareness and mindset awareness is really about learning your boundaries, learning about where you should stop. So if you're feeling like you've invested time and money into lots and lots of courses, but actually it's just making your decision making worse, then you will need to slow down on that. But you also need to find that fine line between slowing down and then stopping. So you don't want to stop learning. So it's about finding that balance. So what can we do if you want to be a bit more proactive? First of all, remember that just-in-time learning. Just-in-time learning is perfect because it doesn't necessarily say to you, you don't need to learn anymore, which some people do say. So again, be careful, make sure you've got that boundary. But it says to you, keep learning, but when you need to. Don't unnecessarily study subjects, techniques, or skills that you aren't offering right now or have any plan to offer. Learn how to use self-comparison. Now, self-comparison is something we're going to do a whole lesson on in this module at the end, but I want you to start understanding how you can actually take self-comparison, so when you're comparing your work to other people's or thinking that your success in the industry isn't as good as other people's, I want you to start flipping that into inspiration, and we're going to talk about how to do that. That's one way you can start to become more proactive and let go of that idea that you need to know everything. Mental training, so mindset training, that's essentially what you're doing right now. Mindset training is something, like I said in module 1, it never ends, it does not stop. And so being aware of your boundaries, being aware of how your behaviors are being subconsciously getting you into a certain level of or frame of mind where you shouldn't be, being aware of that comes from mindset training. Boundaries are so important. I can't stress to you how important they are. And boundaries in every area, I mean. Boundaries with yourself, boundaries with other people, your personal boundaries, professional boundaries. Make sure, again, we will look at this later in the course, make sure you're sticking to your boundaries. Because if you set yourself a boundary, especially when it comes to how much information you're going to take on or new content you're going to take on this week. So I set myself one new skill I'm going to learn this week. A boundary will make sure you do not cross that, because then you can start slipping into, okay, I know this, but now I need to know this, and now I need to know this. You get into that frame of mind of feeling like you need to know a certain amount before you do the next step, and you're only prolonging your boundary by doing that. So don't cross your own boundaries. And the last one, which is a fairly obvious one, is organization. Organization is a really good way to, again, enable your boundaries, essentially. Make sure that you know what direction you're going in, make sure you know what your achievement is and what you want to get to, so that you can stop comparing yourself and stop feeling like you need to overload yourself with information. So organization is a good place to start. So to be proactive and avoid creative anxiety and information overload, make sure you are doing just-in-time learning, flipping self-comparison into inspiration, constantly training your mindset, sticking to your boundaries, and be organized.